in order to allow our kids to feel discomfort and move through that discomfort, we as parents need to do that as well by allowing them to do it, because it's uncomfortable. I mean, I know whenever my kids have hurt, I have to sit with the discomfort myself.
Hello and welcome. We would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay our respects to the elders, both past and present. Hi, honey.
Hey.
I'm Daddo.
I know.
And you're Daddo.
I am.
We've got a really interesting chat today with a couple that, well,
we don't know them.
Don't know much about at all.
No. Even Googling them was, we got a little information, but yeah, you probably don't know them yourselves if you're listening, but well, maybe you will at the end.
Maybe you might know Paul. Paul has his podcast. It's called the Mind, Body, Brain Project. It's on the Nova Network. And Carly, his wife, is a qualified acceptance commitment therapist. She studied Japanese psychology.
I know.
She's also into Stoic philosophy, which, as you know, I'm very interested in.
Yep. She's also a nutritionist. She's got a lot to say, and she's lived kind of a really interesting life. Her husband, Paul, is a former British Royal Navy aircrew officer. That is a mouthful. He's a neuroscientist. He's an exercise psychologist and also a nutritionist who's currently completing a PhD in applied psychology. These two have got a lot going on.
Yeah, Paul also has a great Irish accent.
Yes, he does. We won't try to do it. We won't try to imitate it.
No, we won't. We'll just bring them into the bathroom. Let's welcome Carly and Paul. Welcome, Paul and Carly, to the bathroom. You're coming to us from Melbourne.
Yep. We are indeed. Thank you for having us.
They're in separate rooms, not separate bathrooms.
Yes.
Separate rooms.
He's upstairs, I'm downstairs.
How does that work for you?
Same house.
Is that working out okay?
It's keeping me alive, Cam.
Now, well, Paul, you've clearly got an accent. And Carly, I know you're Aussie.
Yep.
How did you guys meet?
Do you want to kick
I like that
off,
little
Carly?
Yeah, and the reason I said is because the story of how we met is actually, we have different stories. So the first time we met, we were both backpacking in Ecuador, and we're in this little town called Vilcabamba, which is on the border of Ecuador and Peru. Wow. And we were both staying in this hostel at the same time. And they had this tiny little room with two computers where you could, that was the internet room. And I went in there to check my Gmail, and he was sitting on the computer next to me, and it was really slow. I don't know. I think it might have even been dial-up. This is
it was dial-up.
2001, yeah. So I turned to look at him and say something to just say, geez, the internet's really slow today, something like that. And he turned and looked at me, and I just saw these blue eyes and was like, oh, this is interesting. And so we ended up, we had, he was traveling with this Irish guy who had just met in Ecuador, and I was traveling with an English girl who I had just met, but we were both traveling solo. But we were both going to be in Quito at the same time that weekend, so we organised to meet up then. And my story, I guess, is not as interesting as Paul's, but we ended up going out. We met at a pub. We ended up going out dancing. We were out till 3 a.m. And then I'm going to hand it over to Paul because his story is very different.
Okay.
Yes. So when we had arranged to meet, Carly told me the hostel she was going to be in, and I was an inverted snob at the time when it comes to travel, and I was like, I don't book, so just freewheel. I was in the forces at the time, so I like to go to third world countries and just have the randomness, right? So I didn't book ahead. Went to try and get into her hostel, and it was full, so I went down the road. So anyway, we went out, and I remember we're at the we'd had dinner and they were sitting at the bar, and I was thinking, oh, this is going pretty well. Yeah, she's very cute. And then the next thing, I was sitting bolt upright on the end of my bed, and it was 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And I had no clue what happened. I could remember clear as day up until about 9 o'clock, 9:30, and then nothing.
What did you do to him, Carly?
Is that excuse still working for you? I can't believe, Carly, you're still letting him get away with, I can't remember. I was drunk. I don't remember.
I think
Wait, let's keep going.
I think she might have had some Rehypnol up her sleeve. But anyway, so the next thing, so I looked at the clock and I'm like, shit, I'm going to miss my flight. So I jumped up and I grabbed my stuff. And went to check my pockets for everything, and nothing was in there, which was weird because I carried my passport and my money and my flight ticket in my pocket. And so I started looking around the room, frantically pulling stuff out of the bag, and then I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I was completely covered in blood. Like my head was completely soaked. My T-shirt was soaked in blood. I couldn't see a single square centimetre of flesh that wasn't covered in blood. And
it's like a
nightmare. I had 4 massive gashes on my head, 2 on the front and 1 on the back.
Still got the scars.
I've still got a few scars. And then I realised, bloody hell, I've been mugged. But I was panicking because I was going to be AWOL from the armed forces. And there was a bit of a backstory. I'd been to South America 6 months before, got Guardia and got into shit with my boss. And he said to me, if you get in trouble, do not come back. Right? So I have this ringing in my head.
Right.
I'm like, I need to get to the airport. So I ran out into the street and I'm trying to flag a taxi down.
Still bloodied?
And there were taxis still bloodied, right? Completely covered. And they were driving past and I'm going, you buggers, why won't you stop? And then I kind of came to. I was obviously concussed and I'm like, hold on a minute, you look like an axe murderer. And if somebody stops, you've got no money. So if you manage to convince them to take you to the airport, you've got no passport, you've got no flight ticket. So Carly, and then I'm like, and you've just checked out of your hotel. Well done. So I thought, well, the only person I know in Ecuador is Carly, other than Giovanni, who's Italian, not Irish, but he was on the coast at this stage. So I went to her hostel and was trying to tell the guy to open her, to knock on her door. And he was this little Ecuadorian guy who was like, who is this lunatic?
Yes.
So I managed to convince him to go to Carly's door, and he knocked on her door, and she kind of came out and went, oh my God. And I remember she grabbed me and she kissed me, and I went, that's a bit fresh.
I'd like gently.
Well, you kind of gently held me, and she kissed me, and I thought, oh, that's a bit fresh, because I had no recollection of anything, right? And so anyway, she brought me into her room, she cleaned me up and stuff like that, and then said, I've just got to go now because I've got to go down a volcano on a bicycle, so I'll see you later. So she left me there to die, basically.
Wow.
That is so not true.
I thought you were going to break into Land Down Under, the song. She cleaned me up and gave me breakfast and said I come from a land down under.
That would have been good. There was no such breakfast though, Cam. None at all.
Oh, no
Vegemite
toast.
Yeah. So Carly, you go to the volcano and Paul, how do you get out of Ecuador? You've got nothing.
I went on my ride down this volcano called Cotopaxi, and I was worried about him, so I was getting our guide to check in and check that he's okay. But when I got back, he had been out and he walked in with we'll never forget. He walked in with a bag of bananas, and
yes, you do.
But we ended up traveling for the next 3 weeks because Paul couldn't get back to Scotland.
You've just given away part of the story, for goodness sake. So
sorry, you go.
You go. Basically,
never interrupt an Irishman when he's telling a story.
I know. It didn't flow. It's like, come on. So I called my boss and I reversed the charges to the squadron, and they put me through to the CEO, and I told him what happened. And he said, look, just go, take yourself off, go to the embassy, tell him you're an officer in Her Majesty's Armed Forces. They will sort you out with a new passport. So I did that, and they said, right, here's your passport's going to take 3 days. Here's a letter. Take it to the airlines, and they will give you a new flight ticket. So I went to the airlines, and they said, right, that's fine. We'll give you a new ticket. And they're tapping away. And then she went, we can't get you out of here for 21 days. And this is where there's a slight variation in our story, right? In my head, that I've recalled the boss, and he said, look, just get yourself on standby, get yourself back when you can. And in my head, I went to the airport that night to try and get on, but Carly's actually corrected me. I actually went, hey, bugger this, I've got 3 weeks off. So I called my dad. He wired me some money. Carly lent me some money, and we went traveling for 3 weeks. And every couple of days, I would email my boss and say, oh, boss, I nearly got on last night. I was second on standby and stuff like that. And then eventually, when it came to it 3 weeks later, me and Carly arranged that we would meet somewhere, 6 months from there. And we took off. And I emailed my boss and said, right, I'll be back tomorrow, no doubt about it. And then next thing, I'm on the airplane, and the captain came on and said, there's been a problem. We're having to divert to Colombia. So we land in Bogota, and the captain said, okay, everybody needs to get off the airport or off the plane. There's been a bit of an issue. Just go into the terminal, they'll sort you out. And I went into the terminal, and it was pandemonium. And everybody was looking up at TV screens, and I walked over, and all I could see were the planes flying into the Twin Towers. Oh, so 2001, and I was flying back via Miami. So the next thing, I'm in an internet cafe, emailing my boss, going, there's been a problem. I'm in Colombia until further notice. And that was actually the thing that saved my bacon, because he was reading out my updates to all the guys in the morning meetings, and they were laughing at my misfortune. And that actually saved me. And as I was sitting in the internet cafe, Carly popped up on Instant Messenger in Ecuador. And she's like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be on a plane. And I'm like, I'm in Colombia. That's when we had a bit of a chat. Carly was at the time living in New York and deciding whether or not she was going to go back. So she went, I think that's it. I'm pretty much done with New York. And I said, well, she had a stepbrother and stepsister in the UK. And she said, I might come and visit them. And I said, well, why don't you swing by Scotland? Because I was living in Scotland, flying helicopters, search and rescue there. And so she came over for 2 weeks and never left. And that's the story.
That's a movie in itself, right?
Incredible. Did you ever find out what happened with the mugging? Did you ever?
That's an interesting thing, right? Because I emailed my mate Giovanni, who I'd been traveling with. I'd only met him when I arrived there, and we traveled for 3 weeks.
Okay, so Giovanni the Italian, he's the secret. He's the secret sauce.
Giovanni the Italian Irishman, right? So he was on the coast.
I called him Irish.
And I emailed him and then said, "Oh, Giovanni, here, just to let you know, I've been mugged. I'm okay, but I've been mugged." He went, left the internet cafe, grabbed his bag, and jumped on a bus for 13 hours to come and see me, just to see if I needed any help, which is really cool. And we actually, we were in Giovanni's village about 2 months ago in Italy, or 8 months ago with our kids. But Giovanni was leaving 3 days later, and I walked him out at 4 a.m. to get a taxi. And over the other side of the road were all these guys drinking in the shadows, all these locals. So we've kind of pieced together that what happened is we went out dancing, we had a little bit of a smooch. I walked Carly back to her hostel. Then I walked home, and I must have got mugged on that 50-meter walk on the way home.
So those guys were drinking with your money.
Exactly.
That was
yes.
before
2
they
weeks
mugged
later.
him.
But 2 weeks later when
Well,
he's there
later,
with Giovanni.
yeah.
Hey, there's that guy who's paying for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thanks, mate. There you go.
And Carly, when you said you were going to go you were like, yeah, I've got family in the UK. I might go there for a little bit. Was that like secretly, I actually want to go follow this guy? Or were you really going to go visit your family?
Look, I was pretty curious, and because we had an amazing 3 weeks together. I mean, normally when people meet, they have like a period where they date and they're not with each other 24/7. So we got to know each other really, really quickly. So I was definitely intrigued about going and seeing, where it was going to lead to. But I was such a free spirit back then as well. So it was kind of I was able to make this sort of spontaneous decision and go,
Yep.
right, I'll just go to Glasgow. And I only had a couple of boxes of stuff that I sent over. I was practically living out of a suitcase. So it was exciting. And then we got engaged pretty much like a couple of months later. It was all very quick.
Wow.
We went traveling through Morocco and Spain, and Paul got down on one knee after a boozy lunch, and in Spain, this beautiful little town in Spain on the top of a hill with the wall around it and beautiful scenery, and he got down on one knee and proposed.
Fantastic. Did you get married over in the UK, or did you come back to Australia to be married?
No, we got married in Sydney.
Oh, did you? And that was it?
So
You
in the
moved
botanical
back by then?
gardens there.
Oh, that's where we got married, Botanical Gardens.
Okay. We had our reception at the Key restaurant as well, which was beautiful.
And so at the time that you met, so Paul, you were in the armed forces, right, when you met. And Carly, you were free spirit traveling. Were you studying anything at that point, or were you just like traveling the world?
Well, in New York, I was working for an advertising agency over there.
Okay.
And I'd been there for 2 years. And when I'd arrived, the economy was just booming and there was so much work over there. And then by the time I left, there'd been a real dip, and a lot of people in my agency had been laid off. I wasn't, but there wasn't a huge amount of work. So I was going to work with not much work to do. And a friend of mine had been travelling around. He's a journalist, and he'd been travelling around South America for 6 months, and he, he'd picked up the language and he had all these stories to tell, and I just thought, that's what I want to do. I just want to put a pack on my back and go down to South America and just explore.
Yep.
So that was what took me down there, and I did intend to learn the language, but that didn't.
But
quite
an
work
Irishman
out.
got in the way.
That's right.
Exactly.
I know it's probably slightly misleading saying that we were backpacking, because you kind of think students. We were both in our mid-30s and actually working.
Not mid-30s, early 30s.
And so the backpackers were calling you mum and dad.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
That's true.
And then your careers, you both decided to go sort of into similar fields after that. You're both nutritionists, right? And are you actual qualified psychologists, or are you still studying that? I mean, you've done so much of your lives already.
Yeah, so I'm a nutritionist, neuroscientist, exercise physiologist, and I'm doing a PhD in psychology right now. And then, Carly, I'll let you speak for yourself.
Yeah, so after I had kids, I stayed when we moved to Melbourne. I was still working for advertising agencies, and then when I got pregnant, kind of had some time off, and that was a really good time. I've always wanted to be in a role helping people, and when we lived in Scotland, I volunteered at Childline Scotland. And had amazing training there from the counsellors there. So that kind of got me in. It really sparked my interest in this area. I first of all got into nutrition because our youngest son, he had awful digestive problems when he was young, and so the nutrition side of things interested me. So I did my a university degree in nutrition. And then I was sort of coaching people around nutrition at the side. I had a few clients, and I realised that it wasn't about the food. Mainly it wasn't about the food. It was more about mindset and other things going on that was creating, eating habits. And so I got really interested in the sort of the psychology behind it. So that took me on a path of moving into, I've studied Japanese psychology, so I'm not actually a psychologist, but I've trained in Japanese psychology, went over to the States over there, and and did a 10-day residential, and then the whole course took a year to do, just learning about this beautiful Eastern approach called Morita therapy. And what that is, it's about acceptance of our emotions and our automatic thoughts that comes up, but be guided by purpose and values rather than be guided by these emotions. And I just loved this approach and have applied it to myself as well. So that's kind of how I started. And now I'm trained in ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. And I'm also doing my master's in counselling. And I work one-on-one with clients, things like helping them out with anxiety, procrastination, relationship issues, but really giving them the skills and the ability to live mindfully and be guided by their values rather than guided by their uncomfortable or unhelpful emotions.
Beautiful.
Do you guys match up in your ways of dealing with different things? Like I can imagine Paul in dealing with, say, procrastination, being an Army fellow or a Royal Navy fellow. Do you deal with procrastination and anxiety in the same way that Carly would?
No.
You know what anxiety is, Paul?
Yes, we have different approaches, but we've over the years kind of met in the middle, and particularly around raising kids.
I was going to say, how does that go with the kids raising?
Yeah, look, and it kind of all started when we moved down eventually to Mount Eliza when we had kids, and my issue, and I said this to Carly, was, I was brought up in Belfast in the 1970s when all this shit was going down, and now I'm bringing up my kids in a bubble within a bubble within a bubble, right? So I think Australia's a bubble country. Anybody who's never been outside of Australia does not know what the real world's like, in a good way. But then Mount Eliza is a bubble.
Mate, I grew up in Mount Eliza too. I went to Mount Eliza Primary and then onto Peninsula. And Mount Eliza is the 1% of the 1% in the world. Absolutely. It's the freshest of air. It's the cleanest of water. Yeah. It is. My mates who grew up there, some of them still live there now. They've got their own places up on Humphreys Road, and they're doing well. So I know what you're talking about with Mount Eliza, and I think you've made a great description for our listener.
And it's very white Anglo-Saxon Protestant as well, right? The old WASP thing, and so I'd said to Carl, and our kids go to these awesome schools down here, and I said, I really struggle. How do you bring up resilient kids in this environment? And so she actually she vetoed my first suggestion, was to take them through kiddie version of combat survival and resistance to interrogation training that I'd been through.
Holy crap. Just saying that.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you for
my
that.
butt pucker up. Oh my God. No.
I want social services coming.
I got Carly's back on that one. Yep.
So we have agreed on stuff, and look, a lot of it was about sport, and our kids, we sat them down one day, and Carly allowed me to say this. We said to them when they were, I think, 4 and 8, that, hey kids, you need to use the house rules. You need to do a team sport and a martial art, and we will help you find whatever you like, but you've got to do it. And if you want to leave, if you want to stop, you can stop, but you need to find somewhere else to live.
And so consequently, the kids don't live with you anymore.
No, they actually do still live with us,
great.
but it's.
I do, but the oldest, she's actually 17 today. She can't wait to leave home. I wonder why.
So what have you got? You got a daughter, 17, and what's your younger?
Yep.
Oscar,
He's
he's
12.
12.
Oh,
Okay,
great.
so one just a bit. Why the team sport? Why the martial art?
Look, I think there are independent benefits from the martial arts. It's all about discipline and respect and working hard for those belts. And actually, it was one of the best things for our kids. And you all, particularly Oscar, all of his teachers have said, but Kira as well, that they're just awesome students because they're so respectful. And also they did karate and they did kumite, which is combat. And it was pretty full on sometimes, but really competitive, hardworking, and when we knew that this was just absolutely the right thing to do, Kiera was having exams, I think it was last year, and there's a bit of stress, and she was getting to school, and her friends were going, "Oh, I'm really anxious about the exam, Kiera, you're not worried?" Kiera's like, "What are you talking about? Nobody's trying to kick me in the head or punch me in the face."
Yeah.
So, it's that kind of grounding. Yeah. So I think from the martial arts, from that self-discipline and respect perspective, and also pushing yourself and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. I mean, one of our family values is about leaning into discomfort. But the team sport, I think, is really important for those relationships and a bit of leadership and stuff like that, and working with people. So I think that it's particularly important, particularly when you live in a bubble within a bubble within a bubble.
And Carly, with Kiera learning the martial arts, was that something that you had to hold her accountable to, or did she actually want to continue on? I mean, I guess now that she's independent and wanting to go off and travel, you must feel like there's a feeling of a bit of safety, like she can actually take care of herself physically.
Yeah, Kiera has, she actually has an incredible confidence, and I think that has come from her karate experience. Right. So I think she's 5'10" as well, so she has a physical presence. Yep. But I feel confident that she is confident enough to go out into the world and kind of hold herself high. Yeah, definitely.
I know that, Paul, you've written a book called Death by Comfort. And, I'm sure that what you're talking about, the bubble in the bubble in the bubble, and then being able to sort of raise kids with resilience. And I think that I work in schools, and it's actually been one of the things that I've mentioned a lot, that I see a lot of children without resilience. I see a lot of kids absolutely. That, like, you take them on a little walk and they're already complaining, their legs are sore, this is bad, oh, my water spill, just like the little things that I go, oh my God, we got to get these kids out in the bush. We got to take them hiking 2 hours a day. Like, do something where it builds their resilience. What is that something that you, because of your upbringing, you knew how important it is? And what do you see in the world today with children and resilience?
Yeah, look, it's a great topic, and we could do a whole podcast on this. I'm of the same ilk, and there's a lot of talk, particularly since the pandemic, right? Everybody's a bloody resilience expert since the pandemic, but
especially
there's a lot
in Melbourne.
Of talk.
You Melbourneites went through it way tougher than anybody else in this country.
For sure. But if you listen to most of the talk around resilience, it's things like self-care and self-compassion. And from my view, that stuff is necessary, but it's not sufficient. A huge component of resilience has to be earned. That's the key thing. You've got to earn resilience by going through challenging situations and working out how to deal with that discomfort, how to pick yourself back up. And I think as parents, that is a big part of our role, is to be able to stand back and let your kids fall down, but to be there to give them advice to learn the lessons, right? I think that's a huge part of it. And so if you think of resilience is all about character, and character actually comes from the old Greek word, which means the chisel or the mark of a chisel. And people don't develop character by living a very easy life. They develop character by going through challenging things. And that's a huge component of resilience, is to actually face those challenges and to sit with the discomfort and to learn the lessons. Yeah. And actually on my podcast, I interviewed a guy, Stan Beacham. One of the best things I've ever heard anybody say. He says, occasionally we need to walk up to the edge of ourselves and we need to stir into the abyss. And we need to stir into it long enough to learn the lessons. And then we walk back. And then every now and then you walk to the edge of yourself again. And you find that over time, you need to walk further to reach the edge of yourself. And that, for me, sums up that component of resilience.
It's brilliant. That's incredible.
I love it.
I'm thinking I'm going to have to listen back to this when it goes to air and write what you just said down. Carly, where do you sit with resilience? I know that you're a big proponent of stoic the Stoic philosophy. Where do you sit with it?
I think as Paul was talking there, I was thinking about resilience with parents as well, because I know when my children are struggling or if my children are hurting, I hurt like 10 times more. And I think I'll speak as a mother, you have this protective urge over your children. You just want to go and wrap them up and scoop them up and save them. So I think in order to allow our kids to feel discomfort and move through that discomfort, we as parents need to do that as well by allowing them to do it, because it's uncomfortable. I mean, I know whenever my kids have hurt, I have to sit with the discomfort myself. And I guess align with that value, or working out what that value is of being a good parent. And if you're clear on that, then you're more able to make those choices when your kids are facing challenges.
Yeah.
And do you think that's part of the issue, is that parents don't want to feel uncomfortable?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge issue for many people. Not so much Paul, but I know myself. It's hard for me, and so I've really got to practice what I preach about, accepting that. Okay, this emotion that's coming up, this worry, this anxiety that's coming up for my children is absolutely normal, because I'm a loving mother who wants the best for my child. But working out, okay, well, what is best for my child? Because one day they are going to fly the coop, and they need to be able to manage different situations, because life is hard. And if our kids leave home thinking that life is a bed of roses and they think that it's a bubble, then they're going to get a nasty shock.
That's true. Our youngest daughter, she's 17 now. At the age of 11 or 12, she was... they found that she had quite severe scoliosis, and she was put into a fiberglass corset for 2 years from sort of chest to hip. And I think in those 2 years she complained twice. And this kid is like, she is so resilient. She's a bit of a hero of mine. I just looked at her and go, oh, man, if you can live through, something that was so, she used to have sores, it would open up wounds on her, under her arm. I mean, and it's worked, but yeah, it was something that I remember we talked about that, going, she's going to come out of this like really resilient, and she absolutely has.
Yeah.
So
She's very
that's amazing.
Too.
It's a story to tell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and I think that parents underestimate the resilience that kids do have, and they don't give them an opportunity to show or to find that resilience within them. I think that's
really
that's
good
hugely important. And look, we've got a similar-ish story in that Oscar recently got diagnosed with Cushing's disease, which is a very rare disease of a tumour on the pituitary gland that hypersecretes cortisol.
Okay.
Oh gosh, right.
And basically causes severe depression, obesity, diabetes, all of this stuff. And it generally takes a long time to diagnose it. Fortunately, just because I'm quite familiar with cortisol, we had spotted it early. But, he's been through the ringer and having to have neurosurgery and, have this thing that he just doesn't know why he's no longer felt joy. Because of, he had cortisol, the major stress hormone, at 15 times the normal amount. And we sat him down, and thankfully now he's had surgery and he's doing brilliantly in his recovery. Yeah. There's still speed bumps in it, but we sat down around it, and I said to him, so mate, we're big fans on finding the silver lining. Yeah. So I said, mate, what's the silver lining out of this? And he said two things. He said, we have developed a closer relationship. He said, him with me and him with Carly. He says we're much stronger related. And this comes from a 12-year-old. But he also said, I now really know what stress is. And he said, that's gonna help me for later in life.
Yeah, that's great.
As parents, and a lot of our listeners are parents with younger kids, What's, if you can boil it down, 3 things that we can equip our kids to facilitate better resilience?
Oh, the thing that came to mind was growth mindset. What
does that mean?
So growth mindset is, rather than focusing on the end goal and the end achievement, you focus on the process. So with kids, if they do a good job with something, if they, draw a picture or they write a story or they, did well in a race, you praise them for the effort that they put in. It's like, wow, you must have really worked hard for that. Because if the praise is always about the end result, then they don't understand the work that's involved to succeed in life. So that's something that we have always taught our kids and when we praised them, it was always about the process. And my daughter, she's an amazing cake artist. Like, she has her own business and she does these beautiful buttercream cakes. And people will say to her, "Oh, you're so talented." And that's an insult to her because she's like, "I'm not talented. I've just worked hard.
Right.
I've worked hard to get to where I am." So if we can teach our kids that hard work will pay off, not always, even if there's hard work and they don't get the goal or they don't get the medal, if they can come out and say, "Well, I worked hard for that and I did my absolute best on the day," and then they pick themselves up and it's what they do next that matters.
Yeah, and learning the lessons, right? Is and we had in the karate dojo, you win or you learn, right? So it's like when stuff doesn't go right, well, let's forensically look at it and what are the lessons, because life gives you lessons. I think another one, I think a second one would be, and we're stealing from the Stoics here, which is about arete, and we talk a lot about, and that's character. And the Stoic philosopher said that really all you need for a life of flourishing or fulfillment, they called it eudaimonia, the good life, is arete, to know that you are doing the right thing in any given situation and actually be good, especially when no one is looking. And this is something that we definitely drill into our kids is about your character and how you actually behave in certain situations. I think that is a massive one, I think, for any parent to just talk to their kids. And that's that challenge. The Stoics say that when you're faced with big challenges, which all kids will be, and that you can't do anything about it, you can't solve it, it just becomes an opportunity to practice a virtue or to sharpen your character. And when people think about it in those terms, I think it's really, really helpful. So that'd be two. Carly, do you have a third, or do you want me to jump in with a third?
I think to build resilience, you have to have a really good level of fitness and health and brain health. I think being fit and doing exercise every single day and pushing through that discomfort can help build resilience. So I think that's really important for our kids to be able to not just play sport but be active. And that's going to help them with their brain chemistry and, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, excellent.
Great tips.
I know you'd mentioned that you're a recovering Catholic, you said, Paul, but
Correct.
How important do you feel it is to raise children in a religious and or a spiritual home?
Yeah, for me, look, I think that's really important. So whether you're religious or not, and being a recovering Catholic and having seen the impact of religion, particularly in Northern Ireland, I'm not a big fan of religion, but I do recognise that the breakdown of religion has actually created a bit of a vacuum in terms of morals and ethics. In that that was the church or any religion at all the really good parts is that it helps people. It gives them guidance around how to behave. So there's very few religions out there that are unethical. So a lot of it is about being a good person across religion. So I think that's hugely important. So in the absence of that, I think either spirituality or tapping into values, whether it's stoicism around, they talk about virtues or you talk about values. I think it's really important for families and individuals to actually sit down and go, okay, so what are my values or virtues or character traits, and how do I want to live my life? Because they become the North Star around making decisions and helping you through decisions in life, but also through difficult times. And you know, Viktor Frankl, man's search for meaning is really important. It's all about that meaning and purpose, and it comes from values. And Carly can talk a little bit more about this, but that sort of existential philosophy is that life has no meaning other than what we give it. And you really give your life meaning by getting clear on your values or your virtues and how you actually want to live your life and behave in certain situations.
His values are like a compass, you know, they point you in the direction that you want to go in, and you use your values to kind of guide you on how you behave in each moment, especially when there's strong emotions involved as well. So often, you know, if somebody's triggered you and you're angry or you're jealous, or you have these emotions that aren't helpful, and then there's this reaction. So what values do, if you're really clear on your values, if you can create a bit of space between something happening and then you responding, you can use them as a guide and go in that direction rather than a direction that's based on unhelpful emotions.
Yeah. Excellent.
It's excellent stuff. I grew up in Mount Eliza at a as you know,
In a
now.
bubble?
It's just like Belfast in the 1970s, wasn't it?
There you go.
So similar.
So similar. Have you read Bono's book Surrender? He talks about it a bit.
No, I haven't actually.
Oh, it's quite interesting. Anyhow, I digress. No, I grew up in an Anglican family, and so that was a weird thing anyway. But then Elle and I found our way to a Buddhist way of life when we were living in the States for 25 years. So we were pretty close to following a Japanese Buddhist life. And now having come back, and I'm finding a lot of comfort with the Stoic way of life as well. So reading Marcus Aurelius's things and stuff from Ryan Halliday in the Daily Stoic, and they come every day, and he's got a daily dad and a daily Stoic, and it's those little touchstones, Carly, that I think you're talking about there, that you can touch in on and just to realign yourself, get back on track. And hone, keep the character going. I love what you said before, Paul, about be good when no one's watching.
Yeah. That's the litmus test, right? When nobody's watching.
That's putting the shopping trolley back when you're there on your own.
Uh-oh.
I think there might be a story there.
So I might do that maybe 3 times out of 10.
I always do it.
I'm really good at that. I'm like, honey, we got to go. I said, the guy will come by. He'll pick it up. No, putting it back.
We do something called the 2-minute shower. So we're going to ask you each the same question, and just to keep your answers as short as possible. Okay,
I think that was directed at me, was it, that last bit? The Irishman, keep it short.
Nice
If at all
stories.
possible. All right. Do you want to ask the first one, honey, or shall I?
You go first.
All right.
We've already wasted 2 litres of water just
That's true.
faffing around at the top.
What do you miss when you're not together?
Oh, well, I'll go. You're thinking about this, Paul. I miss our chats. Like Paul and I share the same passions, the same interests, and I just have so many kitchen conversations. So that's my answer. I miss our chats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss our chats, and I miss Carly being the grounding force with me, because often I do get a little bit emotional and have certain reactions, and it's Carly that kind of brings me back down and says, put the military shit away for a second and just think about stuff.
Nice.
A time in your life that you would like to revisit?
I'll go first on this one. Definitely the traveling, and because we are both travelers at heart, and when you have kids and jobs and stuff like that, it gets in the way. But we are starting to do that. We're going to Vietnam very soon. We were in Italy last year, but we're going to go to Vietnam and want to expose our kids to different cultures. So I think it's pretty cool now that our kids are old enough to understand those things, and we want to travel with our kids and want to travel with our kids for as long as possible. And then when our kids are no longer interested, I want to just continue that travel.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Carly?
So I think mine is around the travel as well, but I think what I would like to revisit, or mine's kind of like what I'd like to do a little bit differently, is when I was such a free spirit when I travelled, but I think I would like to have travelled with a bit more purpose and gone and volunteered somewhere or gone over and maybe lived in one place for a while longer rather than kind of drift.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Who's better at dancing? It's really important.
Me.
That is so easy.
Paul is a shocking dancer. He slaps his bum and he crawls under people's legs. And
you have to be bad at something, Paul. You're good at everything else, right?
So I'm a terrible dancer, and I have no beat or rhythm whatsoever. And Carly's very musical and's got lots of rhythm, and I am just embarrassing in terms of on the dance floor and trying to have a beat or sing, and I'm tone deaf completely. So yes, that's a shoe in that one.
Yeah,
but you're a lot of fun though.
They're obviously a great example for your kids because you're having a go.
That's right.
Resilience, Paul. It's about
and you know what? And my kids are at the age, and I love it, particularly my little girl who's 17, where I get to embarrass the crap out of her on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do.
It's that old saying too, isn't it, honey, where you dance like nobody's watching, right?
Yes.
That is right.
Fits right in with this philosophy we've been talking about.
I think there's a book in that, actually.
What the world needs more of is...
Joe, I think the world needs more resilience.
Right.
I think we've all got a bit precious, and we are mollycoddling our kids, and it's not working well.
Is it okay to have a certain amount of mollycoddling?
A little bit. Once you've actually pushed them into doing the hard stuff, and they've kind of come through it, then you can kind of pick them up and mollycoddle them, I think.
Okay. All right.
Post event, not pre-event.
And so you've made a great effort, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
How about you, Carly? What the world needs more of is...
I think the world needs more...
mollycoddling.
Acceptance. Yeah.
Touche.
But this kind of balances out what Paul was saying, I think, is the world needs more acceptance of what it is to be human. Because, it is normal to feel uncomfortable emotions, and they do pass, but we are so intent with all this social media of getting rid of emotions and trying to live an anxiety-free life, and that is absolutely impossible to do. So I think part of that resilience is accepting what it is to be human.
I love that. Yeah. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was this woman, she's an anxiety expert. She's studied anxiety for years, and she said anxiety gets the worst rap. It's this idea that we should never be anxious when, in fact, anxiety is an emotion that we need to have. If it gets acute, then it's not a great thing, of course, like any emotion. But I just love that because it's so true. We've got these anxious kids. I'm really anxious. It's like, we got to get rid of the anxiety then. We got to make them happy. Where anxiety is what can fuel a lot of things. That it's positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, definitely. We need it. And we wouldn't have survived as a human race without it.
That's right. That's right.
And the best treatment for anxiety, exposure therapy.
Yep.
Not mollycoddling.
Right.
Exposure, like getting into ice baths and
well, eventually, it's actually exposing people to the discomfort that they feel, but at a very small level, and then building up their capacity, right? And that's part of resilience is building your capacity to deal with discomfort.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Last question.
Last one. You have it. Go. You go.
Can you describe each other in one word?
Magnificent.
Oh. One word. Gosh, there's so many words I could describe you. I'm going to say dynamic.
Oh,
yeah,
also
right.
good. I get that.
He's moving.
Magnificent and dynamic. Beautiful.
Moving and shaking.
Moving, but with no rhythm.
There you go.
Well, we'll leave you guys to it and you can go work on that. Carly and Paul Taylor, thank you so much for joining us in the bathroom today. It's been wonderful.
Thanks for having us. That was
Thank
fun.
you. It's been a lot of fun.
That was a surprising chat.
Usually we use the word surprising when it doesn't go how you thought it was going to go.
Now, I didn't have an idea of how it was going to go, though. I mean, you never know because we've spoken to many different, therapists and people in that field. Psychologists, yeah. Though we haven't really ever spoken about resilience in that way and resilience with children, and it was just really interesting. And I mean, how's their love story? How's their meeting story?
Incredible meeting story.
Right?
I mean, it's like, wow, the guy's covered in blood and where they were in the world.
Yes.
And how that works. Also, we have not really talked a lot about religion or spirituality on this podcast either. And so to see how and hear how it works positively was really good. I really enjoyed that. Love the idea of just accepting what it is to be human and all our feelings as well.
Absolutely.
It was a great chat.
Yeah.
A really good chat.
Yep. And of course, I love me an Irish accent. Can't go past it. Well, listen, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast too and you gleaned some information out of it from Carly and Paul Taylor. Thanks so much.
Let me just say also, Paul has his podcast on the Nova Network, the Mind, Body, Brain podcast. So I'm sure there'll be lots of jewels of wisdom and further insights from Paul and his guests, because they certainly delivered for us just then.
Yes, absolutely.
If you like our podcast, which I'm assuming if you're still listening you do, please rate and review us. It helps us get the word out, and we very much appreciate it. So until next time, we'll catch you soon. Stay safe.
Thanks for listening.